Good morning. Greetings to the great viewers of the Dr. Ober Tashaka show. And I want to say great because you all are dedicated. About 85% of the subscribers watch the show, and that is really serious. And I get a lot of good comments, and some of them even give me insights into what I'm doing that I wasn't aware of. One viewer said that I present layers of knowledge. So that was nice. It was giving me an insight. So I really want to say that we enjoy this, and we've got some real good people out there, and we look forward to your comments. So this morning, we're completing the last of an introductory three-part series on astrology. I'm sure Sandrea will be coming back from time to time to share her wisdom with you. Many people have said they want her back. And one of the best comments on the last show was that it was really good to see how we were taking the spirituality and the divinity of astrology and then applying it to people's lives. And people saw that as really valuable. And of course, that's the real purpose of the whole show, is to give you a greater understanding of your own powers. You can use them yourself in your own life. So the topic for today is planets and signs in astrology, and the 25,920 years precession of the equinoxes and its impact on history. You'll find out what that means. Before getting into the topic, I want to request that the new viewers to the show hit the subscribers button. I mean, it's easy. And in YouTube, Facebook, and everywhere else, subscriptions, everything, particularly in YouTube. It puts us in better algorithms and a whole bunch of other things. So hit the subscriber button. I also want to remind people that we will be launching a webinar on the sixfold stages to mental freedom that represents the ultimate healing that deeply plunges you into self-knowledge, self-respect, and self-love. And when you go deeply into that, this is one of the best medicines that you can get, because self-knowledge is the basis for all knowledge. This will be a 12-month seminar, and a number of people have enrolled. But for you to enroll, and I know some of the most serious people, they say they're going to take it, they haven't enrolled. So go to my my email, Otashaka, OTSHAKA at sbcglobal.net, Otashaka at sbcglobal.net, and simply say you're interested in being a part of the webinar. I've had a few people that are in organizations, which is really good because it means they're doing things in the community and they wanted to know more about it. So organizations are also welcome. So today's show will have two complementary parts. The first will be led off by the master astrologer, my sister Sandrea, who will discuss Neptune in Pisces, delusion, divinity, ego, or soul. Let me repeat her topic. Neptune in Pisces, delusion or divinity, ego or soul. And you're going to see when I go through the precessional cycles, we're in the precessional cycle of Pisces. So she's going to be giving you planetary stuff. This applies to an age too. You know what I mean? Over 2,000 year age that people have been going through in history. So this is a very important topic that Sandrea will discuss, because it will explore another dimension of astrology, the dimension of planet and sign, focusing on Neptune and Pisces. You will see why Sandrea has picked this planet and sign for her presentation. Sandrea, once again, it's great to have you. And
okay.
Do your thing.
Thank you, Shaka. Thank you for having me on your show. And let me just change this. So, all right. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be back again. And I want to touch on Neptune in Pisces. In the heavens overhead, right now, Neptune is in his own sign or her own sign. Neptune has a masculine and feminine side to it. And since 2011, between 2011 and 2026, Neptune is in Pisces. This is a big deal because Neptune's orbit, it takes 165 years. This is not going to happen again for another 165 years. And it's been especially personally important to me being Pisces. Right now, Neptune is within 2 degrees. It's heading towards the conjunction of my sun. And I am just so excited that I'm alive and that I'm wise enough to be able to utilize this energy and hopefully to assist you in utilizing this energy also. So what is the energy of Neptune in Pisces? Well, Neptune just happens to be the most spiritual planet in our solar system. It involves divine love. People call it unconditional love. Well, divine love, of course, is unconditional. Like that sun. The sun shines on everyone every day, regardless of whether you're a rabbi, a rapist, or a rabbit. That sun continues to shine. It's life, it's love, it's warmth. Neptune has a similar kind of quality, and it includes the whole of life, the whole galaxy, the whole universe. It includes everything. So ultimately, Neptune represents our union with Source, our union with our Creator. I like to use the word God. However, if you're an atheist, you can use the word life herself. You can use the word the universe. However, so Neptune's at its highest. I'm going to talk about it at its highest first. At its highest, it is, as I said, union with the divine. Now, in order for us to extrapolate, to really utilize and take in, be at one with this frequency, we need to vibrate at a level of love. We need to first love ourselves. We can't love anything else until we love ourselves. Love ourselves, love our God. And then now we have a possibility. We have an possibility of really finding this Neptunian power inside ourselves. As we've been talking about in this series, as above, so below. That Neptune out in the universe is a reflection, it's a mirror of the divinity that we have within ourselves. And how do we connect with that? The ways of connecting is meditation, dance, singing. As my younger brother, he's my older brother too, but he was younger. He would go fishing. It doesn't matter as long as you're in a space where you're not going over and over in your mind your regular repertoire. You need time to cut loose from your normal way of jabbering inside your mind. We're always talking somewhere in there. And when we can get to a point where we are a witness and we can watch what thoughts are going on and say, hey, no more of that. Hey, come on. Really? That's not, that can't be the truth of me. To engage in that kind of way so that we can be the recipient of this new energy. And as I've talked about before, Neptune, when we align it with the Tarot, it is aligned with the Tarot key 12, which is a man hanging by his foot, and he's emptying. And that is the best way to get in tune with Neptune, is to allow yourself to empty. Now, Neptune, as I said, its highest side, it's about visions, and it's the unseen qualities of ourselves. And we can say, oh, it's not real because I can't see it. Well, can you see air? And look how important that is. So Neptune is called the great dissolver, the great unifier, and the great unveiler. So this is a time, while yes, it has, as I said, its incredible visionary side to it. The dark side, the shadow side of Neptune, is as mighty and as powerful as its height. Fear is the biggest thing that Neptune represents in its shadow. Fear and doubt and delusion, deception. The line goes on and on. Neptune is also aligned with our hidden programming. And believe me, if you think you're not programmed, whoa, God bless you. That's all I can say. There's programs. This world is like, it's filled up like with minefields on so many fronts. It's not just the movies, but the movies are a big thing. Neptune rules the movies and photography and that kind of thing. But we are being programmed at levels that some people have, they really wouldn't want to believe it. And it's not just now with technology, it's been happening for centuries. The programming to keep us from recognizing who we are. So, like for instance, in our school system, everything is about the logical mind. It's like as if that's all we have, like our brain is just meant to be logical. Well, it's not a whole brain unless you're including the intuitive, the imagination, the psychic abilities. That's the wholeness, the intuition, but that is not taught. In fact, imagination, which is our greatest tool, and I'm going to come back to that and really spend some time on it. But here it has been noted that, no, how can I say it? Because we are being duped into just using one side of our brain. Oh, as long as it's logical and factual, then it must be true. It can't be true if that's all it is. If we're not using our whole brain, we cannot even get in touch with what truth really is. So these are really, really powerful times. And I believe, so Neptune not only is here in its own sign Pisces, but right now Jupiter is in the sign Pisces. And so is Chiron, which is a rather newly discovered back in 1977, 78 is when Chiron came into the picture, the wounded healer. So there's a lot of support at this time to assist us. There is potential for major mass spiritual shifting into a world we never knew was there because we've been blindsided. All of our focus and attention is on the glamour of this world when there's another, there's a whole other aspect of it that you can't see it, but you can certainly experience it. You can certainly feel it. That is even more real than this so-called world that we're living in. So how do we get in touch with Neptune? We need to let ourselves feel. Neptune rules our emotions and our feelings. And woe to the person who has decided they're not going to feel anything anymore because it's just too painful. We need our feelings and we need to feel them. And we need to be really exceptionally in tune with them and even our painful feelings, because this is the potential for birthing into our our divinity, into our spiritual side of ourselves, that, wow, it's beyond the beyond. And I'm glad I used that word, because that's also what Neptune is about. It's about us going beyond ourselves. I just want to regress for a minute. It's coming to my mind about Alcoholics Anonymous, and how they talk about going beyond the self. They don't necessarily use the word God, but they use going to a power greater than the self. Because it's true, the problems that we face, both individually and personally and collectively in society, the problems are so thick, so deep, that if we try to deal with them by ourselves, it's like an ant crawling up an elephant's legs trying to navigate. I mean, it's absolutely insane. As far as I can see, the only way out of all of this is through our divinity, through going beyond ourselves and really allowing our soul self to be in control. Okay. So people that are listening to the news and stuff, it is broadcasting tons of fear. And Neptune is considered the ruler of the media. And so there's lots of fear, lots of distortion, lots of veils. But those who have eyes that can see, or those who are willing to go beyond, to let go of the egoic biases and prejudices and opinions. What is an opinion? It's nothing. It's just our take on something. It's nothing if it isn't true. And how can we know truth unless we let go of our biases and opinions and ask and go beyond ourselves and get in touch with something beyond ourselves, whether we call it God, whether we call it our guides, whether we call it the universe, whether we call it life herself. But this is a time, I'm telling you, if we don't do this, Neptune rules slavery, and it also rules liberation. Which one is it? Take a look at what's happening to our freedoms. If we don't have freedom of speech, if there isn't room for diversity, how can we have freedom? It's impossible. So, to open up to Neptune, we need love, we need mercy, we need forgiveness. Forgiveness of ourselves first, always, always. That's number one. That's number one in the astrological wheel of wisdom, is to thy own self be true. First, you can't help anyone until you've helped yourself. So this is a time of loving yourself, forgiving yourself, and having mercy for yourself. And then once you can give that to yourself, now you have the potential to give it to your fellow human, to your brothers and sisters, whether it's in your tribe or the tribe of all humanity. So I want to say just one more thing, I'm going to move on, but pain is inevitable during any times of growth. And so Neptune on its shadow side is known for wanting to escape pain and to dive into anything that will dull it. Watching movies, drinking, alcohol, and drinking, and any kind of drugs. But if you're using drugs to drug yourself, then you know that is going to be a barrier for you experiencing your own divinity. If you use plant medicine, Uranus is in Taurus. So there's among the younger set, there's a lot of younger kids experimenting with plant medicine. Well, plant medicine has been around since the beginning of time to assist people to go from one level to another. So it depends. If you're in that place of truly wanting to stay open, not using anything to dull your senses, but to heighten, to allow you to go to another level. There are many different incredible plant medicines from the Amazons. In fact, that's where doctors go to get the pharmaceuticals. They go to the Amazon and they find all these incredible plants that have been curing people of all these different diseases. Well, they can't patent the plant, so they've got to add a pharmaceutical to it, and now they can sell it to you. But then now that pharmaceutical negates what the original plant was able to do, because then now you got that long list that's telling you all the problems that you're going to likely have, because there's something that's unnatural, that it does not come from Mama Earth, that has been added to it. So again, we have to be gut level honest with ourselves. We might be telling ourselves that, oh, I'm using this plant medicine because I want to see, when in truth, when you really look down, it's like, oh, it's just too uncomfortable. I really just want to have a break. And it's okay to have little breaks once in a while, but I would recommend taking nature breaks. Go out into nature. It's hard to forget who you are when you have real quality time with nature. So, I want to go right now and talk about imagination. Imagination is governed by the sign Pisces, by the planet Jupiter, and by the planet Neptune. And as I said before, imagination, it's been taught to us as if it's just your imagination. Oh, it's just storytelling. Well, I want to break it down a little bit. Imagination has two major root words to it: image and nation. Imagination, that's your image nation. It's a nation of images. And these images are powerful, powerful. They are more real than what we call reality, because they actually are manifesting our reality according to what are we envisioning for ourselves. And then the word imagination, and in the image, it has a word like, it is aligned with the root word of magi, the word magic. So image is also about the magic that we have within everything. The politicians, the religions, it's like nobody wants anybody to realize how much magic we have inside, just by the right use of our image nation, right use of imagination. So why do we have shamans? Why do we have medicine men that they go beyond what ordinary society, the knowledge of ordinary society, and they're able to do works and wonders like Jesus was saying, that ye will do even greater works than I. We all have that potential. We all have that in us. Now, Neville Goddard, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's a theosophist, and he is a person that has mentored me for a long, many years. And for him, what he says is that that's the real Jesus Christ inside ourselves, is the imagination, the right use of the imagination. And he has a book called Awakened Imagination, and I recommend that you read it. You might change your mind. You might allow yourself to change your mind. But we really do. We are upholding our reality with our inner images. And so Neville Goddard talks about revisioning and the power of revisioning one's life. And so what he would do at the end of every day is he would look over his life and see how it was. And when he would get to something that he wished he hadn't said or done, he would rewrite the script. And through the rewriting, as you continue to do it, pretty soon his life was elevating, elevating, elevating. He's got the most incredible stories of how he's used his imagination. And I'm going to share a personal story of my own, of how I used mine and the difference that it made in my life, just so that you know, just because I'm Pisces, just because I'm a water sign, it doesn't mean I'm airy-fairy. I am very grounded. I have a strong Saturn. I have a strong I have strong earthly houses. So I do have earth in me. In fact, every water sign, when you go deep enough on the other side, you have the opposite of yourself, which is the earth sign. So I am Pisces, but when I go deep inside me, I've got Virgo. And my life can prove it. There was a time when I worked in corporate America, I took care of 17 people, managed them. I mean, managed everything, you know, their schedules, this and that. So come on. So, but what I'm going to say, if you've got a lot of earth in you, you've never heard it, it's going to sound like it's just off the wall, but it isn't. So what happens, I'm in my mid 40s, how I use this for myself. I've used it many other ways, but this is the story that came to me to tell. I was in my mid 40s and I loved dancing, but I was overweight and really, still really, really shy, very full of fear, and too shy to take dance classes because they would say they were beginner classes, but you'd go in and the other dancers, it may be that was a beginning type of dance, but they had clearly lots of training already. So one night I did this vigil and I laid out all these beautiful garments and I put on music that I loved and I made a prayer to God. I said, look, God, please make me a dancer in my next life. Because it looked impossible I could be a dancer in this one. I'm overweight, I'm overage, and I'm not trained. But that night, I began dancing and putting on these beautiful costumes and all my favorite music. And pretty soon, I was so deep into it. It was almost like a trance. I was so focused. I saw a vision. And in the ceiling of my room were all these incredible beings, like Indians and from Africa, and wherever they were wearing their native costuming. And pretty soon, an image would come and dance in front of me. Whatever that image would do, I would do it too. And it went on, and all of a sudden, the sun's coming up, and I realized I had done it for 8 hours, and I hadn't realized it. And then I saw a vision. And the vision showed me that there were thousands of people that were there supporting me and that I was here to give support to thousands of people. And then they showed me standing on a stage, dancing and receiving an ovation from thousands of people. Well, that morning, I decided it was so incredible. Here, my vision and these beings, I could see them and they're dancing for me. It was very nebulous, but I could see them nevertheless and feel them. And it felt so wonderful. I didn't care if I danced in this lifetime. I had that dance, that 8-hour dance was plenty enough for me. However, a few months later, I get this strange invitation to go to an open mic. And I think I'm going to an open mic for poetry. And I get there and here's this woman. She meets me at the door and she said, "Are you an artist?" I said, "No, I'm here to recite my poetry." She said, "Speak to me at the break." So at the break, she comes to me and she said, "Dear, I have this little international dance company. I don't normally do this, but I'm going to be showing films of the kind of work we do. And if you like our work, would you join us?" And then she thought about it. She goes, "Do you dance? I mean, by the way, do you dance? I mean, who's going to invite you to join a dance company? And by the way, do you dance?" So she shows her film. And what does the film look like? My vision. People are wearing the costumes that some of the costumes I had seen in my vision. So I signed up, yes, and ended up dancing around the world with them. From what? From dancing and from calling upon and working with my image nation. So, imagination, it is our greatest power for dealing with our life. When you find yourself triggered by Neptunian triggered, whether you're going into doubt, you're going into fear, you're feeling weak, whatever it is, your best thing to do is to do whatever you can to just relax yourself. Don't try to fix yourself. We don't know how. Einstein says, there's a couple of quotes I wanted to give of Einstein. One of them is that he says that it's impossible to fix a problem at the level that you made it. You need to get beyond it. And the other quote that Einstein says, and I agree with him, and he was Pisces. And what Einstein says is that imagination is far greater than knowledge. Why? Because with knowledge, well, we usually take it and we try to do something with it ourselves. But with the imagination, we're going beyond ourselves. And now we have the opportunity for a real solution. So the other thing, if you're having, going through big Neptune kinds of things, which I'm definitely going through it in my own life and coming up, great surprises that are like devastating. And the other trick that I use is that I am so clear with how my life has worked out because I have aimed since I was very young, since I was around 8 years old. I've been writing letters to God and saying, if you exist, prove it, because blah, blah, blah. Let's see, I've lost my train of thoughts. Let me just get back into it. Of myself, I can do nothing. Okay. So that train of thought looks like it vanished on. So let's hop on to a different train. The gifts. That there's a gift in everything. And because I believe that that's so, that's how it is in my world. Because what I've also discovered, it really doesn't matter whether what we believe is true or false. If we're giving attention to it, we're focusing on it, it is going to grow in our universe. So I believe there's a gift in everything. So, just recently went through one of the biggest devastations in my life around now. And all I did was say, okay, God, show me where the gift is in this. And when I did that, all of a sudden, this smile starts coming over my face like a Cheshire cat. Here I am in the middle of boo-hoos and all like that. And here's this big smile coming. Then I notice there's a smile in the belly. Then I notice there's a smile in my heart. And so I don't know exactly what the gift is, but I know a gift is coming. And it sent light all over my being. So that's one thing that you can do. The other thing is ask for visions. This is a time when I recommend people need time out in nature. Nature, it's huge. It's beautiful. It's love. You can just feel the love of God, the love of life through nature. And ask for visions, ask for help, go beyond yourself. This is a time, the mystics and the alchemists, they have left their sacred breadcrumbs for us. So whatever it is that you like to study, whether it's esoteric kinds of knowledge or wisdom, or you want to work with inner guides and shamans on the inner plane. I've had so much work done to me just by being on the inner plane, being worked with, being shown things how to, not even taking any classes in different things, and being shown how to bring forth healing and to assist others in bringing forth healing out of their own selves. So all the planets, all the signs are inside of us. They are our powers. They are our gifts and our talents. They talk about our unique nature. Each one of us is one of a kind in the entire universe. And this is our time right now to, it's like everyone is offered this banquet of Neptune. But I must say, Neptune it's the most spiritual planet in our universe, but it's also the most difficult for us to really get in tune with because of its intangible nature, its intangible essence, and because we have been so brainwashed to be using only one side of our brain. But if we utilize, as I've mentioned before, utilize that quality of emptying, just really, I mean, literally in the morning, I will just literally bend over. I'm standing up and I'm bending over, letting everything go. Absolutely everything. And then I ask to be filled with the newness of now. I recommend that you do that. This is a time, it's not going to happen again for another 165 years. So, what do I want to say in ending? Oh, there was something I wanted to read to you from Neville Goddard. This is incredible. He says, for if man accepts as final the facts that evidence bears witness to, he will never exercise his God-given means of redemption, which is his imagination. He says that when man's eye is truly opened, he realizes that all that he beholds through these eyes, it appears without is really within. Everything that appears to be without is really within. And when a man awakes, he realizes that everything he encounters is a part of himself. That's all Neptune. Neptune is the great unifier, the great at one with life itself. That's 3, that's page 4. Okay. So again, he says, to you, truth is not confined by facts, but by the intensity of your imagination. So here we find the embodiment of truth, which I say it's human imagination standing in the world drama before the embodiment of reason, which is personified as Pontius Pilate. I mean, this is what he has to say about reason. And he's also saying, when you begin to awake, you assert the supremacy of imagination, and you put all things in subjection to it. You never again bow before the dictates of facts and accept life on the basis of the world without. Now, I know that's far out, but why not contemplate it? What if it's true? What if it's true that what you think about, what you're imagining is creating your world? And that so much of what you think about is undercover. You're not even aware that you're thinking about, because it's whirling in like a whisper, or whirling in the back of your mind, and different programs that are in there that are whirling. And your life is being created based on those whirlings. But when you take charge and use your imagination, use your power to ask first, seek ye first the kingdom, and then ask and ye shall receive. And you begin to ask to be deprogrammed, ask to experience the truth of yourself, the truth of your soul way beyond ego. When you begin doing that, let me know. Let me know what begins happening, what begins shifting in your life. This is the best time. We are so privileged to be alive on this planet right now. So privileged. And if we can do whatever, I mean, I recommend music. We really, really, really need music. And find the music that touches your soul. That will help you to go beyond. And I think yeah. Let me just look at one more thing. So I just want to end with this. There is a new world awaiting each and every one of us who dares, but to be willing to be taken to the promised land. Now, I'm not talking about dying. I'm talking about right here, right now. The promised land is inside our own heart, inside our own image nation. The magical new reality born out of heart-centered living. It's right here waiting for us. Do you dare allow yourself to be shifted into a greater aspect of yourself and fulfill that promise, and ye shall do even greater works than I? Do you dare be your own alchemist? Do you dare engage and test the axioms that were left to us by masters and mystics and alchemists and shamans and medicine people? I want to end with a short poem that actually is a song, but I won't do the song version. I'll do it in the poetry. Looking for paradise, I realized I write the script. I play the lines. I am both human and divine. And I have a genie, and genie is the vision living in my mind. I am the net I cast to sea. I am the fisherwoman, the weaver, and that which I weave. And that which I wove, I wear. And that which I wrote, I swear, sometimes still takes me to hell. I then rewrite the script, write it darn quick, rewrite the lines, rethread the loom. Paradise is not beyond the moon. We write the script, we play the lines. We are all human and divine. We all have genies, and genie is the vision living in our minds. And paradise is not beyond the moon. Thank you so much.
Right on. Very good, Sandra.
Thank you, Shaka.
I'd like to comment on a few things that you said. One, your point about facts. This society, the European philosophy in America is pragmatism. And it's the thing they claim it's what works, but it's based on facts. And it's whatever facts the powerful create that then they manipulate to make it look like the truth. And that is generally the operative principle of how the West has moved throughout the world. Whatever they say facts are, they call that truth, but they know it's not true. You know what I mean? But
Beautiful.
we end up falling for it a lot of times. You know?
Yeah.
So that's a very important point.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that out.
There's another point you made about imagination, which was your big point. The Dogons say that Amma, God, created all the multiple universes. They say 10, they mean many, through God's mind.
Yep.
And their paradigm for that is they call it the womb, W-O-M-B, of Amma. Of course, we know Amma is not physical. That's a symbolism. So it means through Amma's thoughts, things come into being. And they call this Ka Amma because Ka is your destiny. So your thoughts are alive. So the other point that you made about thoughts are real, false or true. And if you believe them, you'll manifest them. So, and that's ultimately true. But I really think there's something to this. These vast cosmoses, that there are probably more than one, are a product of God's mind. What do you think of that?
Oh, yes. I mean, first was the word. There's a whole study of etymology that shows you how it's not just the word, but the languaging, and how the languaging is, it's called, I've got so many, the language crystal. You can get that online free. No, in PDF, because it's out of print now, but it's a complete solution to civilization's oldest puzzle. And it's absolutely amazing where root words come from and where language comes from, and how we are literally imprisoned inside certain languages. And that when we want to shift, we need to find new languages to be able to shift out of different modes of reality.
Yeah, that's why African people globally, particularly outside of Africa, took the linguistics of Africa, and in the US they call it Ebonics, but it's a Niger, Congo, Bantu linguistic expression that 85% of Blacks in this country speak. And so the vowel, y'all, and all this stuff, that comes out of an African vowel structure. And then there's an emphasis on action. And so you have the thing called the verbal noun, where the noun is active. So instead of a funeral, you're going to funeralize somebody. But what it's telling you is the mentality is living what you believe, not just talking it, walking it. And we run around saying we ain't got no culture. Well, you've adapted that one to this reality, and you've done a pretty good job. You need to know it better so you can give yourself some credit for it. So what you're dealing with is really profound. You have anything else you want to say?
Well, I do want to say too, there's a free book put on the internet up on Scribd, or Scribed, however you pronounce it, for free. He's a brother, Saban Bomar. It's called The Code to the Matrix. And I think you would find that very interesting.
Will Smith regrets of all his acting decisions not to take the leading role in Matrix.
Is this again?
Will Smith, is a pretty good actor.
Right.
He was given the lead role for Matrix, which is this paradigm. Have you seen that film?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, it's a paradigm for oppression and breaking out of it. And so it ends up, a white boy ends up playing the role that he could have played. And he regrets it because he's basically a spaceman. He comes in this age of comic books and, space and all this. And that's why, one reason, good actor, but that's one reason why he's accessed all markets. But he missed this one. His wife didn't. She got a secondary role, but she knew being a warrior in space against the system that oppresses you, that's a pretty good message. And me, I'm kind of, even though I'm into astrology and astronomy, I don't watch Star Wars and all that kind of stuff. I don't watch it. But as Sun Ra said, the great jazz musician, space is the place. But he's talking about astronomical space. Yeah. That was beautiful. And then you got a taste of my sister's poetry. She's a master poet. And
thank you.
So she's basically telling you that your thoughts are real. Even this white boy who came up with this despiritualized stuff, Descartes, it was based on the premise, as you think, so you are. But he misinterpreted it because he's coming out of a Greek frame of reference. So for him, that meant mind is the only thing. No body, no soul, no nothing, just mind. And so he got it from the dream realm. He got a truth, but he mistranslated it, because he was seeing it through the lens of a materialistic, despiritualized culture. So your stuff was profound, lady.
Thank
Bad.
you.
In our culture, that means good, as you all know. By the way, that hits on my theme. So now this is the second part. And by the way, I've really enjoyed this because, first of all, I have my sister who's really deep and profound. But secondly, I also have one of the great loves that I have, which is astrology. My first love in disciplines is philosophy, but philosophy is spirit systems. And this is the master spirit system for really showing you your inner self, giving you the best idea of your inner self. So Sandrea has focused on Neptune and Pisces, and being a Pisces, it has special meaning, but she located it within the broader domains of what it represents for an age. And it's telling you this Neptune and Pisces isn't going to be there forever, and that it has certain energies that affect people. And she gave you positive and negative. And so this is a key thing I'm getting into now, which is something that some people may have heard of and a lot of, and that is the precession of the equinoxes. Some people may have heard of this and many have not. So the title for our two presentations, Sandrea's just finished, Planets and Signs and Astrology, and she was dealing with Neptune and Pisces. And then mine is the 25,920 years precession of the equinoxes impact on history. So I'm both a personal astrologer and a historical one, and we've been covering Nubia, particularly the Anu, who are the founders of ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt. So I thought a fitting way to finish this introductory cycle would be to show how astrology impacts history. And what I'm going to say about one part of the world, it applies to the whole world, because when you're dealing with this great period that is governed by what's called the Great Year, I'll go into it in a minute, under what's called the precession of the equinoxes. So just as Sandrea is explaining how a planet in a sign, in this case, Neptune and Pisces, generates energies. And those energies affect a climate or a field of thought, a feeling, the way you see things. It colors how people view things. And it depends on how you take it. So she was giving you the light side, which is the beautiful, and the dark side, which is the negative. And that's the way everything in life works. It can cut either way. It's your choice. That's what you're here for, to make your own choices. And this is the key thing I want to stress about astrology, astronomy. The stars do not dictate, you do. And that's her point. And you are the ultimate force here, for good or not so good, or very often a mixture of the two. And the question is, which is outweighing the other? So what I want to deal with is phase of planetary cycles, particularly the cycle of the Earth's rotation, and how it affects human history. And planets have their cycles. For example, in astrology, astronomy, Saturn circuits the sun every 29 and nearly a half year, 29 and a half year. So from the time you were born to 29 and a half, that's one circuit of Saturn around the sun. That has an effect on life, because if you look at Saturn, Saturn is a planet that rules old age. It rules institutions, very often conservative, but it rules the structure of society. And everyone has Saturn somewhere in their chart, but it is also very influential in society at large. So when you go through 29 and a half years, you've gone through one orbit of Saturn through all the signs. And so that would indicate that's a period of maturity. Interesting for me, I married at 29. my first time. And when it hits the second cycle, then you're at about 59 years of age. Depending on what you learned in the previous cycles, this can begin the period of the flowering of wisdom. This depends, because it depends on what you learn. And you've got some people who reach old age and there's nothing new coming out of them, nothing original coming out of them. I know some scholars that I will listen to, and you'll never hear me do names on this show. I don't do that, but they're brilliant. But when they do the major premise, I know the whole speech. And they're in their 60s or 70s. And so I know there hasn't been much growth there, because by this time, your imagination, as Sandrea said, should be bringing some new stuff in. One of my greatest teachers, Dr. Jacob Carruthers, would always say, there's nothing new under the sun. And then he would give up and give a speech. And he was so wise and so humble that what you would see coming out of his mouth, what you'd hear, you never heard it before. That was Jake from Chicago, a little tiny guy. When I sent the draft of the mother principle to him, to 25 of our scholars, including him, he gave me the stinging criticism. And then he said, you asked for it, didn't you? I lost a night's sleep. He thought it would take me 6 months to make the correction, but I have a computer, baby. I can cut and paste. And within 2 weeks, I had that correction, and the correction was sent back to him. But Jake was a fountain of creativity. Why? Because of his humility. Another thing Sandrea was talking about was ego. And ego is like a balloon. It's inflated. It's hot air. And if you really believe that ego, you will be taken to places. We all have to work on gluttony and egoism. And gluttony can take many forms, not just food. You know what I mean? And so Jake was humble. And that's one of the things I love most about him. Great master, beautiful human being. And that's one of the greatest qualities any human being has, is humility. And Jake had it in spades. Of course, Jake had an intolerance for astrology. He'd go crazy if you said astrology. I only saw intolerance 2 times with him. One was with astrology, and I think that's because his father had been a Methodist preacher. And while Jake was now into Kemetic, Medunetter, this and that, he had inherited that bias. And I knew to shut up. I never questioned him on that, because I knew it'd be a waste of time. Plus, he's my master. So everybody's got their thing. But Jake, I bet you're listening to this right now, and I bet you in heaven, you found out there's really something to this. Huh? I'm going to get the last laugh on you on this one. You know what I mean? So what I want to get into today is the greatest astronomical cycle that both astronomers and astrologers recognize, that's called the Great Year. The Great Year. And this is a cycle of 25,920 years. This is a great year. This is symbolic in terms of year, because it doesn't mean 365 days. This is the bigger year. And astronomers and astrologers both recognize what it is, but astronomers don't understand the impact of this great year on life, and it affects the whole planet. Just one observation. If you're a historian, and even if you aren't, if you study any period of history, you will find that people at a particular time are doing similar things at a particular time. So there's an age of what they call chivalry, or the knights, and there's a whole way that people approached warfare. That's a particular time in history. There's a particular period where civilization was spirit-based and should still be, but that also had its origin, even though that's the way all society should be, basically spirit and whatever else you're dealing with in society, which will be some form of matter. So that would tell you something. How is it the Chinese, at the same time as the Africans, at the same time as the Europeans, at the same time as the Mesoamericans, they're doing pretty much the same stuff. You know what I mean? at higher levels for certain people. I won't go into that. But the key point is because there's a climate out there that isn't just the weather. It isn't just your environment. It isn't even just your culture, which is very important, but it's the climate of the astrophere, you know, the celestial realm. And so what I'm dealing with is a particular phase of that. It's the big year. And actually, I could teach a class on this, and I have on ancient Kemet. I can just use precessional cycles, and then I know the facts and stuff. And when you see it, it's like a glove, a good fitting glove on your hand. But what's different is it gets you into the mind of the age. It gets you into the psyche of the age. That's what it does. That history usually can't do because it's confined to facts unless you know the civilization. This great year covers, astronomers will usually say 26,000 years, but to be exact, it's 25,920. I like to be precise. Precise, because a lot of people don't believe this. I'm not dealing in no generalities that haven't got some basis to it, and particularly when it comes to cycles and motion. So this great year is called the precession of the equinoxes. And I'll explain what precession means in a minute. During this long cycle, or this great year of 25,920 years, the Earth travels through 12 sites in the sky, just as it does in a year for the zodiac. But it does it in a different way, and I'll explain it in a minute. And each of these sites in the sky of 12, which is, magnified over this long period of time, has a dominant astrological theme. During that period, it could be Aries or it could be Taurus or whatever. I'm going to focus on one period in pre-dynastic Kemet. And so, for example, 10,800 years ago, the precessional cycle was Leo. And that is around the founding of the Anu in ancient Kemet. So if you really want to know the foundation, that's it. And that's around the time that the Great Sphinx was built. So what that means in terms of the Earth in relationship to the zodiac Leo is going to partially explain why that Sphinx looked like a lion 10,800 years ago. And most historians say it goes back a long time. It could be 10,000 years. You know what I mean? And that's generally the dating for the beginning of pre-dynastic Kemet. So, or the the precessional cycle of Cancer. And when I get into Kemet, I'm going to use the Kemetic term for this. But the precessional cycle of Cancer would be 8,460 BC, and it would go until 6,480 BC. That's Cancer. And so again, you would expect to see in the development of the civilization certain qualities coming from the sky, those energy fields that would reflect that. And the period I'm going to focus on is the 6,480 BC, 6,480 BC to 4,320 BC. And that's a period that the Greeks would call Gemini. Western astrology calls it that. But I'm going to use Shu, S-H-U, Shu, and Tefnut, T-E-F-N-U-T. And this is where the Greeks got their Gemini. They just called it Gemini because they got their astronomical knowledge from Kemet. And I'm going to go into that in a minute. So Gemini is okay, but you're going to find that when I explain what Shu and Tefnut means, you're going to see just how appropriate it is for describing this historical period. And if that's accurate, then what Sandrea just got through finishing, which happens to be the age you're in now, which is Pisces, then you're going to really see just how accurate that is if you don't already see it. So the precessional periods, which have 12 months to them, are divided into a year, which is 2,160 years, which is 1 year of the 12 years or 12 months in the great year, which is 25,920 years. Are y'all getting this? You hear me? It means that just as you have 12 months in a year, and it comes to 365 and a quarter days in a year, so you have 12 months, which is really not months, but divided into 12 in the precessional cycle. And each month, because it's a great year, is 2,160 years. Get it? Okay. So when we're talking about a particular civilizational period and it's coming under the precessions, that's how it works. Now, I want to give you a brief, simple explanation of how precession works. It's much more technical than this. I'm just going to give you the brief stuff. And you have to know astronomy to know this. You don't have to be any great astronomer, but what you need to know is at least what this is. How does it work? So the Earth in its rotation moves through sites in the sky. And history, based on the precessional cycles, is influenced by the Earth's movement through cycles in the sky. And this is according to the Earth's relationship to the zodiac, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. In Dendara's temple, we showed you how the Kemites charted the zodiac with each astrological sign. And so the relationship of the Earth to the zodiac in the sky at a particular time, which is this precessional cycle, will then affect the energy field for the Earth at that particular time. Now, both astronomers and astrologers agree there is a thing called precession, but astronomers don't know the effect that these cycles have on the Earth, and these are the signs in which the Earth is aligned to at a particular time. With these 12 months of 2,160 years, what happens with the precessional cycle is that instead of the Earth rotating through the cycle of the signs the way it does through, the sun does in its movement through the year, which is Aries, Taurus, Gemini, what happens because of the orbital pull, the pull of gravity of the sun and the moon on the Earth, it has such a pull that it causes a gyration. It's like a top and it moves in a spiral. But instead of moving forward, going through Aries, Taurus, Gemini, because it's precession, it's moving backwards. And so if you have Aries, Taurus, Gemini, then it's going to be the reverse. And that's what basically is happening with precession. The pull of the gravity of the sun and the moon on the Earth has a pull where the Earth could go straight or it could incline slightly to the right, but instead it spins like a top going from side to side, or it's kind of like a dancer. Sandra's into dance, it's shaking your hips, you're going from side to side, it's a gyration. And so that gyration will go through these 12 months of the great year. And depending upon the cycle that it was in, then the next cycle it will precede. And so instead of Aries, Taurus, it would be Taurus, Aries. So it's going, it precesses. And this is a slight pull on the Earth's movement. It's not the same as when, the sun is rotating through the various signs. It's different. It's a wobble that takes nearly 26,000 years to take. Now, the question is, did the Kemites know the precessional cycle? See, Westerners like to say Africans don't know nothing. And then they like to say the Chinese don't know much more. They like to rule them out. They'll rule the Chinese out because they didn't have their method of recording history. The Chinese had very detailed methods for recording history. They'll rule them out and say they were too ethical. Well, that's because Western society is not ethical at all, but they'll pretend to be. There's no word for good, which means right in any European language. Good means the powerful. There is no ethics underneath their stuff. Christianity brought in the veneer of ethics. They don't really believe it. That's why they went around the world genociding people with the authority of the Catholic Church. So underneath it, there ain't no ethics. Bill Clinton is a good example. He did the world in. He did in the poor by eliminating welfare. He went to Haiti, and because he had been governor of Arkansas, he forced on Haiti after he brought Aristide back, which looked like a good thing. Aristide's a great leader coming out of Haiti, did a lot of good things for his people, brought him back and then put him under restrictions. And one of them was that they could no longer protect their rice because you put a tariff. That's a tax that protects your agriculture. That's why America's strong. They had tariffs on everything. And what happened? Arkansas rice came in and did in the rice of Haiti. And now Bill Clinton said, I did it and I was wrong. Yeah, He did it fully knowing what he was doing because this boy has no ethics. You hear me? All that talk is a talk. Watch his walk. His walk is not straight. And I could give a lot more on him. So the key thing is when we're dealing with precessional cycles, the way in which the Earth is pulled through the force of gravity coming from the sun and the moon affects particular stages in history. And so the Temple of Dendera clearly shows that the Kemites knew precession. This is real key. They were master astronomers, master astrophysicists. They came up with the most precise calendar the world has ever known. It's the one you use right now. You understand? They understood the zodiac belt. You saw that in the Temple of Dendera. You also saw that they understood the decans, which is a part of the precessional cycle as well. There are subcycles of 720 years for each decan in the precessional cycle. And we're in the decan right now of Scorpio in Pisces, Scorpio. So, I mean, if you really want to understand what's going on in this age, if there's a dark side, and, Scorpio gets a bad rep because it's always putting the Scorpio down, you know what I mean? But there's a high and low within Scorpio. But the key point is it's psychic, it's intuitive, it's water. And on its high level, it's great transformation. And in astrology, we know it's the phoenix. If you see a highly evolved Scorpio, oh, they're magnificent to see. But there's the lowly evolved one, and that's the killer. And they can rule organized crime. And deceptively, they can hide, and they're the best. I mean, if you want somebody to recruit for the CIA, get you some of those negative levels. They'll really be ideal because they'll keep a secret and they'll do you in at the same time and go to church and confess and go back and do the same thing. So you're in the sub-cycle right now, Pisces, but with the sub-cycle of Scorpio. So it can be positive or negative. It depends on what you do with it. My first wife was a Scorpio. She was in between. She was not the low level. She was in the mid level and a good person and had potential to go to the highest, but she was a good person. One thing I've been good at in picking wives. I wasn't fully informed when I first married. There's a lot of stuff I had to learn. That's why I went through my crisis. But I knew how to get good people. She was a good person. And the wife I have now is magnificent. You know what I mean? Lovely. And highly evolved. The first thing I had on her when I picked her was this time I did the picking. You brothers out there and you men out there, you think you're doing the picking. The women do the picking more than you because they're more in tune with what's happening. But I had gone through an awakening and I knew this. I had a laundry list. It was about 20 things that I wanted in a woman. And people told me, you'll never find it. Well, I found it. And one of the top one, love yourself. What Sandrea was saying. If you ain't got that, and there's nothing selfish in it, even though it's the basis for you getting some love, that wasn't my reason. My reason was I'm going to have a contented, happy person. Because if you love yourself, you're into yourself, just like I am. You know what I mean? Do your thing. Whatever it is, I don't care. As long as it's for good. You know what I mean? So the thing is, the precessional cycle was discovered by these ancient Kemites, but they try and give credit for the precessional cycle to the Greeks. You know, they try and say that the Greeks gave birth to or discovered precession of the equinoxes. Now, there's a real problem with this. The Greeks couldn't even set up a good calendar. Every other year, their calendar was off by a month. How in the hell are you going to discover something so subtle and so vast, you know, and you can't even set up a calendar. Furthermore, when the Greeks went to Kemet, the great priest of Kemet told them, Solon, he said, among you, there are no elders. You're all children. He didn't mean there was no one over 80 or 90. He meant the civilization was new. They were new on the block of civilization. So precession is something so refined and so subtle. And it takes a lot of astronomical knowledge to come up with this. They weren't around long enough to know it. And by the way, their first astronomer was called Thales, or Thales, Thales. He learned astronomy in Kemet. So it wasn't the Greeks teaching the Kemites, it was the Kemites teaching them. But still at the same time, you know, the European rewrote history. Once they take you, they go and manipulate your past. And that's one reason why you got issues around identity, because you're identifying, as Sandrea said, with their facts. Their facts take you out of history. You know what I mean? So the Kemites knew the rising of Sirius. You couldn't see this. You had to do astronomical calculations. And by the way, there are stone hedges or great stones near the Great Pyramids. And these were done in the pre-dynastic period. And they chart the movement of Orion back to 16,500 BC. It does not mean they were there at 16,500. The earliest we know is about 10,000 BC. But the key thing is they knew its orbit and they were able to track it back that far. So people, they could do that. And then they built pyramids according to the alignment of the stars, the most important of which was Orion. And that's because that is at the origin of the stellar system. And since we're the first people, we're interested in origin. Western astrophysics doesn't care about origin except the Big Bang. They care about energy to use it for power. That's it. They don't want to know what is its influence on life. Descartes, who was a mathematical physicist, brilliant, he said, I don't care about the energy except for the use of power. I don't care what else it's there for. And then he said later, so we can rule the lower dominions of the world. You hear me? You know what that meant? Africans, Asians, and Native Americans. He slipped that in. He barely ever said it, but that was his real purpose. So this was all about cosmic power. And you see now these white boys going up, you know, the one from Britain who just went up on his little flight, which was barely into space. Well, that's also, he can make him some space money. You know what I mean? So as Gil Scott Heron said, white boy on the moon, white boy on the moon, you know what I mean? But if you see a picture of the Dogon, they have a spacewalker on the moon, and there's a brother who's a Dogon sitting on the moon, and he's telling him, this is a dead place. It serves a purpose astrologically, but he was in effect saying, I traveled here before. I didn't need a spacesuit. You know, we did astral travel, and we could tell you there ain't much here. You had to get in a spaceship to find out. So the Kemites discover the precessional cycle. Remember this, you're a cosmic being. You're the miniature universe in the larger universe. You are nothing but cosmic dust, that is stellar dust. And all the energies up there are in you. That's why this astrological system is so important, because at the time of your birth, all these planets that are up there are located in a certain spot. Last week, I looked at Coltrane to show you how what looked like not much that he brought to Earth had great potential. He believed in himself. He loved his destiny. And the trials of life is what took him to the highest level. And by the way, when I get into the netters that rule, that is Shu and Tefnut, you're going to see a relationship to Coltrane. I'm going to show you, not that he was Shu and Tefnut, but he had qualities very similar to those two, and I want to share them with you. So Sandrea was dealing with the materialization of thought and how the only thing that matters in the Western world is really reason. Intuition is ruled out. You're going to see with this astronomical era of Shu and Tefnut in the pre-dynastic period that it covered both. Not one, not the other, both. And that is really what life is about, is being able to synthesize these two realities, not one to the exclusion of the other. And there are many synthesis. It's not just water and air. It's earth and water. It's fire and earth. There's a whole bunch of mixtures. All of these, and many of you are made up of different mixtures. All of these mixtures are a path to your portal to creativity, or what Sandrea called imagination, being able to imagine your future. So it's a shame that a lot of us have neglected this field of study because of despiritualization. Most Afrocentric people do not study astrology. And I know for a fact they have trouble with it, and they're beginning to explore it, but still with suspicion. I know that. And the best proof, as Sandrea said before, is get your chart done by a good astrologer. I suggest you have Sandrea do your chart. And even if you believe in it, you need to know yourself better. This is your car. This is your destiny. So it's important then to understand that, the Kemites understood the precession of the equinoxes, and they had an appreciation of its impact on history. And in fact, in their temples, they would change the netters, that is the divine Neters. Those are principles of nature, but those can also be gods. Asar, who was the founder of Kemet, a human being who was so creative, they treated him as a god later. And so he ruled certain domains. I'll get into that in a minute. And so the precessional cycles draw on the energies of a particular period. And in this particular case, we're dealing with the period of Shu and Tefnut. Now, to understand how Shu and Tefnut in this period of the precession of the equinoxes and affected pre-dynastic history, it's necessary to see this through the eyes of the ancient Kemites or the Egyptians. And so for them, they viewed everything through their philosophy of origin, of beginning. And all people have some idea of origin. And so for the Kemites, life begins out of the primeval waters, but it's not really water. It's a watery-like substance. And so in their account of the beginnings, The watery mass precedes even God, and God comes out of the watery mass. Now, this is important because we know 70% of the human body is water. We know that 70% of the Earth's surface is water. And so they were giving you something that's very important, an understanding of the composition of the Earth and the composition of yourself. They also saw water as electromagnetic, meaning it had energy. And this is the basis for physics. Kemetic physics comes out of the noon. And by the way, the Twa who give birth to Kemet, who become the agrarian Anu, they call God Ilani, as I pointed out before, which means vital force. They didn't see God as a human being. They saw God as an energy. And they were the closest humans to God with the greatest power. And that's why they could innovate civilization. We've gone through 3 shows on the Anu, a neglected people. So at the agrarian level, agricultural level, they found Kemet. They're called Anu, these Twa. So when we look at the precession of the equinoxes of Kemet and this particular period of Shu and Tefnut, which is a period of twins, they're twins, just as Gemini is a sign of twins. This is a period through the lens of the watery mass, the noon. The Kemites saw how energy came to the earth. It came through the waters first. So Andrea is going to relate to that because water governs the psychic, governs the intuitional. And by the way, if you look at the Chinese, Lao Tzu's thought, we got a brother who watches this show who calls himself Lao Tzu, but the great philosopher of China, Lao Tzu, he sees water as the primordial symbol, and it's the symbol of strength, but it's normally viewed as weakness. It's a symbol for the feminine. It overcomes all obstacles, and that's the beauty of Lao Tzu's thought, is that it appears to be a philosophy of weakness that is great strength. And so in looking at the precessional cycle of Shu and Tefnut, then we are looking at it through the lens of the watery mass at first. Now, when I examine this precessional cycle of Shu and Tefnut, this is the period 6,640 BC to 4,320 BC, 6,640 to 4,320. And we're going to look at 2 things. How did this precessional cycle affect the founding of the civilization itself, and how did it affect its philosophy? I'm simplifying it. It had a lot more effect. I'm just dealing with 2. This society itself, the organization of it, and its philosophy, its deep thought, which in African thought is always spirit-based. That's my first love, African philosophy. My first one is Dogon. And then that got me into everything else. And I'm going to tie that in here in a minute. So the first question is, what does Shu and what does Tefnut symbolize? Because that symbolic meaning has got a lot to do with the energy levels. And notice the Kemites didn't just arbitrarily come up with this. They're doing a lot of readings of the stars and signs and everything else. They were both astronomers and astrologers. So they got some pretty good precision on this through the symbols of their netters or their divine principles, in this case, Shu and Tefnut. Now, the first thing that Shu rules is air, and that's the male. And his sister, who is also sister wife, Tefnut, she rules water and moisture. Now, see, in the West, there's a big problem here. You know what I mean? These are contradictory. No, they're not in nature. These are the natural forces. Can you live without air? Can you live without water? Give me a break. You know what I mean? So the thing is, they first symbolize that. They also, Shu symbolizes something else. Now, this is really heavy. Shu is said to have separated heaven from earth. That's symbolism. What that means is that prior to Shu, there was no life on earth. This means when Shu and Tefnut come, then by separating heaven from earth, they are dealing with organization on earth, life on earth, all the things that they do to contribute to that. And Shu is formed out of Atum, the god Atum, and so is Tefnut. And these are the beings that God sent to bring order to the earth. But with precessional cycles, what this is dealing with is the energies that they represent that affect Earth, that affect the earthly environment from the cosmos. So their meaning symbolically is real key. And by the way, African philosophy is all symbolic, or in the case of the Dogon, it is a table of signs. And we call it symbol, but they have a stronger system than symbol, because their table of sign compacts within it every element of the universe in the smallest thing. The Dogon do that, and they're astrophysicists. And so my thinking, some people say my thinking's layered. That's because I come through this African system. And so there are levels and layers. And because going through this system, it transforms you. It brings you in harmony with nature. And so when I get into Shu and Tefnut, I'm going to give some personal examples of how it reshaped me, because that's basically what these systems are. These are not knowledge systems in the West, just information, you get information, feed it back. These are transformational systems. You still won't get it by me using transformation. That's abstract. I'm going to get more concrete in a minute. So the thing is, Shu and Tefnut are the netters or divine principles sent by God to separate heaven from earth. Now, Shu comes out of the spit of Atum. He spits out Shu. And Tefnut is created also by Atum, the god, one of the first gods that comes out of the watery mass or the noon. Now, here's the key thing. What's their role? This is why I use the Kemetic symbols first, because they're more profound, but they really explain what this precessional cycle represents. What's their role? You know, I do research for each show I do. You know what I mean? I'm just not going off the top of my head. And this particular one required particular research because I wanted to be pinpoint accurate, but at the same time, brief. For me, it's brief. Me. Now, so what does Shu and Tefnut represent in the precessional cycle? Their essence is to carry on the creative cycle and create the social order of Kemet, stamped by twinness. Now, this is very precise. Get each one of these words. They are to carry on the creative cycle. They're literally creating the life of civilization. God created life, but they're creating the life of civilization through the social order stamped by twinness, the social order of Kemet, pre-dynastic. They do this in different parts of the world. We're talking about Kemet, okay? So what does this mean? Social order. What does that mean? And then what does it mean to put a twin stamp on this? Social order is referring to the organization of society. And in the case of the social order of Kemet, it's the founding of Kemetic civilization. And so what does that mean? It means that the Anu coming out of hunter-gatherer, they establish certain patterns of life. Then they discover agriculture. Read my book, The Integration Trap, I go into this, where they found agriculture. The women who were gatherers become agriculturalists. And by the way, Aset, who was the wife of Asar, the two founders of Kemetic civilization, she's the mother of agriculture. She's the founder of corn. And the women of Kemet ran agriculture, which means they ran the economy. That meant they had a whole lot of power. You hear me? And they had a dual relationship with the ruler, so to speak. So, but here's the key point. So in establishing civilization and the order of society and the organization of society through the Shu-Tefnut influence, what is happening is they're creating a communal order, because out of hunter-gatherer, you have sharers. These are people who shared everything for over 100,000 years, 144,000 years they come into being, mitochondrial DNA. For 100,000 years, humanity lived in the hunter-gatherer state. What does this mean? No one owned the land, no one owned the air, no one owned the water. Everyone shared it. And by the way, when Westerners come along and create this idea of private property, which John Locke is the author of, and you all ain't studied none of this. You don't study the people who set up the philosophy of control. You just study that thing you call white supremacy. And you know I don't use that term, supreme nothing. These size 13 has kicked the behinds of every corporation I've crossed, including the CIA and FBI. Supreme nothing. My father was fighting the Klan with his fist and beating them. Supreme nothing. You up here talking about white supremacy, and you are put in the victimized state to begin with. Everybody's whipped this white boy. We whipped him. That's why Trump ain't the trumpet in the White House anymore. Those little Vietnamese whipped him, as Malcolm said, with a little bag of rice. They got off in there and kicked the behind of the U.S. United States of America. They did that, but you run around here, white supremacy, this, white supremacy. The Mongols never called conquering more real estate than the whites ever thought of conquering Mongol supremacy. They didn't have that idea. Anyone that says they're supreme has a deep sense of inferiority. Don't buy into it. You hear me? Ain't nobody supreme. You hear me? We want to get our power back, not to rule the world, to rule ourselves justly. You hear me? So the thing is, when we're looking at Shu and Tefnut, they're creating the social order. And so communal sharing is key. When they move from hunter-gatherer in Africa and around the world, the first order is the sharing of land, air, and water. And that's why until the coming of the European, the coming of the Arab slave trade, people lived in prosperity, you hear me, around the world. And so it is with the European that they come up with this idea of the land being private property. And John Locke is the author of that. And your government is based on John Locke's second treatise of government. And the whole role of government in this country is what? To protect the property of the rich. And so we go from people living with a plentiful life and no hunger to people living on $2 a day, to people eating mud. That's why I tag myself the original revolutionary. I am one, but I have a different kind of revolution. I ain't no Marxist. I'm not into a materialist idea of anything. It's got to be spirit and matter combined. You understand? But we got to shift things back. Instead of us going to somebody else's playbook, go to your own. And your own, you shared for over 100,000 years. Africans in Africa and the villages are still sharing. Their governments are controlled by the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. And if you let the people of Africa run their stuff right now, they'd be prosperous. You see those food riots that are occurring in South Africa right now? That's because the greedy elite in South Africa are eating stuff up at the behest of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. They're looking out for themselves. Instead of cutting a paycheck for the people who need money for food, they are cutting a paycheck for the military to go out there and shoot them. Cyril Ramaphosa, president of South Africa, should know better, but then he's a near billionaire, so he really doesn't. So the thing is, Shu-Tefnut sets the foundation for the social system, the organization of society. Sharing is one part of the organization of society. Under this processional influence, and by the way, I pointed this out before, the Chua say, this is in their oral accounts. We founded a civilization called Kimi, K-I-M-I. The name that the people of Egypt gave themselves was Kemet, K-E-M-E-T. It's the same thing. They said it was a paradise. They said we made great boats, we sailed on the oceans, we built great cities, we built a great civilization, and then we decided to leave it That's in their oral tradition. The fact is they got pushed out. They got pushed out by the dynastic Kemites who came into power in 3200 BC. But they built all the elements of civilization under the influence of Shu Tefnut and other precessional cycles. So what did they create? The social order. They created a pharaonic system. Pharaoh. What does Pharaoh mean? Great God. There's no idea of state in Egypt. State in the West means the army, the police, the secret service, the instruments of force and violence. Pharaoh was God's representative on earth. All Kemites were viewed as gods, but he was the great God, and sometimes she. And order could only be maintained, ma'at, by him speaking truth and doing truth. He didn't always do it. There were oppressive periods in Kemet. I am not just focusing on Kemet as a historian, and I know no society is perfect. And in this case, there were periods far from perfection, but there was an effort to uphold order. And that idea was by being in harmony with God, standing on truth, society would prosper. So the Pharaoh's job was to hold back isfet, I-S-F-E-T, disorder, which is wrongdoing. And if he did wrong, then probably the hell's going to come on his head, which happened between the end of the 5th through the 10th dynasty, when there was a rebellion in Kemet against oppression. So Kemet had these periods, but his goal was to maintain order. And when he did, society prospered. So the Pharaoh begins in ancient Kemet. And before I showed you a picture of the Pharaoh, and I'll show you again. And this is a picture of a sar. You all have seen this before. This is a sar here. This is an actual picture of a sar. This is a fact, a wooden carving. This is a likeness. You do not see likenesses in Kemet like this unless they are a realistic portrayal. And in pre-dynastic Kemet, the likeness of chief priests and pharaohs were preserved in wood. Later in dynastic Kemet, 3200 on, in stone. And so when you see the pharaoh of the 18th dynasty, the pharaoh of monotheism, Akhenaten, he's portrayed in an effeminate posture. That is, he doesn't have the muscular build and everything. That's because he wasn't a warrior. He wasn't into carrying out military activities, but he wanted himself realistically portrayed. And that picture you see of a sar is a portrayal of the real person. And if you look at the eyes and everything else, no one knows how far back that goes. It's thousands of years, and it may well have been during this Shu Tefnut period. And you may have also noticed the crown. I'm going to go into that one in a minute. So what you see then is the organization of society is what Shu and Tefnut represent. And so they give birth to the pharaonic system. You've seen the picture of this little African on the cover of my book on the integration trap, an Anu person going to visit the God, the great one. And that's the oldest evidence that the Anu are the source of pharaonic civilization, again, coming under this Shu Tefnut system. They also create a specialized, highly organized civilization. Whereas hunter-gatherer is simple. You got a hunter-gatherer, and basically the patterns they set up then lay the patterns for subsequent civilizations and empower women. Particularly, women are playing a key role in the hunter-gatherer societies as they would play in subsequent African civilizations. What we find in their creation of civilization in Kemet is they create a priesthood that administers the country on behalf of the pharaoh. This is a highly educated group. They have the highest educational system in the world, Paran, the highest university, House of Life, where they trained everything except warriors. They had specialized craftsmen and women and farmers. Women were the leading farmers, and that it was an agricultural economy. So the power of the country was based on the power of women. Last name of a person came through the line of a woman. You know, Pharaoh's power came through the line of the woman. There was no systematic mistreatment of African women in these civilizations. They were co-equal. And again, Shu Tefnut, just as Shu is air, Tefnut is water. They are cooperative principles in building civilizations. Kemetic civilization and African civilizations in general were founded on these principles. They created the architects, who also were astronomers, because they built according to the stars, and much, much more. So this is what Shu Tefnut generally represents. Now, the key thing about this precessional cycle of Shu and Tefnut is it is a cycle of twinness. And to really understand Kemetic civilization, African civilization, I really want to stress this African-American civilization. You created one here. You run around talking about you ain't got no culture. You actually created civilization. And just because the whites are in power and they've done savage things and they call their stuff civilized, and that's far from civilization. You have created the elements of civilization. It's just that we don't have the nation state that runs it. But all the elements, the arts, the sciences, all of it, the thought, the ethical systems, and it's culturally based on a new African culture. You just don't know it. You run around here great, and you're moaning about all the crises you face, which we do. We're under oppression, But the fact is, you built civilization in the heart of barbarism, as Native Americans did before people came here. And there's a lot of other people are trying to do as they come here, So, but it's founded on this. And I really want to say twinness is at the core of this African-American civilizational model, which I'll touch on briefly. So the question is, how did this notion of twinness, and by twinness, the Dogon are best at doing this. In the West, this idea of twinness is considered opposites. And so if you have day, then you have night. They treat it as opposites. Male and female, they treat it as opposites. And in the West, and the author of this is a Greek philosopher called Heraclitus, he saw all differences that were opposites as in conflict. That was basically it. He even saw up and down as being in conflict with each other because the Greeks were at war all the time. So they saw difference as opposed. But twin suggest complement, connection. It also, at the same time, complement, in this case, water and air. That complements each other. Each of these are sustaining life principles. But twinness suggests connection. Twins often feel the same things. Twins can, just vibe together. I mean, often selecting similar occupations, even though the soul is different, there's a lot that's common in twin. So the Dogon, the Kemites, and others use the metaphor of twinness to explain what the West would call opposites, because they saw things that are different complementing, supporting each other more than conflicting. And it's also what I call cosmic philosophy, because it connects you to the cosmos rather than putting you in a position where you're in conflict with it, which is the Western view of opposites. And so man is in conflict with woman, and man and woman are in conflict with nature when we're all one. So twinness also suggests oneness. This is the more profound part of twinness. So this era, this pre-dynastic era, Shu and Tefnut, is influenced greatly by twinness. So what does that mean? This is what's real interesting, because when you're in this cosmic environment, it influences you. And if you are high level, then it influences you in a high way. If you're low level, it's going to influence you in a negative way. But the Kemites, they had a goal of trying to model themselves after heaven, even though they didn't always succeed at that. And that was certainly the goal of the Anu, the Twa, and they usually succeeded in that. They called themselves pure people. God had no fault in their description of God. God was all good. Most religions, you see negative and positive in the portrayal of God. Among the Twa, no conception of God is negative. And they were the closest when it comes to being in contact with God, and therefore the most powerful forces for creativity, because they were closest to God. They give birth to medicine, but it's spirit medicine, as well as physical medicine and every other thing. So in the case of Kemet, in the organization of society, how did twinness affect this? In the organization of society, I'm doing it on two levels, organization of society and then philosophy. Okay, so what we see in the organization of society is the pharaoh wore twin crowns. That's the first thing. Twinness symbolized his rulership, yet he ruled twin lands. And so the pharaoh ruled upper and lower Kemet. And I just showed you the picture of Asar. He has two crowns. There was one crown, which is the crown of the ram, which was on the outside. Then there's the white crown, which is the crown also representing a part of Kemet. So representing two lands, the two crowns fused together in pre-dynastic Kemet. The twin crowns symbolized south and north. And because twinness was so pervasive, each region, south and north, had double capitals. So the south of Kemet was the capital of Nekhen, Nekhen, Nekhen. That's one of the double capitals of the south. The other one was Nekheb, Nekheb, Nekheb. So a pharaoh with two crowns, and each region has two capitals. Now the pharaoh rules both of them. But the point is, it's the age of twinness, and they understand they're conforming to this. And when the precessional cycle shifts, then their paradigm shifts. Now, I'm not going to go into that. I'll just say dynastic Kemet, 3200 BC, comes under a different precessional cycle. And you'll see the symbols for that cycle conform to that precessional period. Now, the kingdom of the north had twin capitals. These are easier to get. Dep, D-E-P, and P, P-E-P, Dep and P. Twinness. The rulership of the country is twinness, but there's a philosophy underneath this. And I'm going to go into this philosophy in a minute, because this philosophy had a profound effect on me. And I'm going to tell you something. Most of you are in the philosophical mindset of Urugu, as Marimba Ani called it, man minus the feminine principle. You're in it. I was. I know you're in it. Not all of you, but a lot of you are in it. And I don't care how many facts you got on African history. If you don't change the philosophy, and see here, philosophy is more than beliefs and ideas. It's thought pattern. If your thought pattern doesn't shift, you're going to still find yourself at war, in conflict with the cosmos and with nature. And you're going to have trouble with this astrological stuff. This is mumbo jumbo. You don't get it. But when that mind shifts, and that takes time. And by the way, the creators of African American culture were Africans. And so if you're looking at the art form of the African American, the spiritual blues, it's twin. I'll go back into that in a minute, because that's at the heart. That is the peak of your creativity, your art form. And it is the icing on the cake. It's the prettiest part. It is sheer beauty. You hear me? And a lot of you hip hoppers don't want nothing to do with spiritual blues. Go listen to my little piece that I did on the spiritual blues. Brother Ogara has watched it. He said it was the most beautiful thing. He said, it's my most inspiring piece. Why? Because beauty is inspirational. And the spiritual blues of all the art forms, it's the foundation of everything. And guess what it's founded on? Not the separation of spirit and matter. The spirituals are the blues. And in fact, the spirituals are more blues than the spirituals. That is, they're more earth than heaven. So when they talk about heaven, they're talking about freedom. You hear me? On earth. On earth. You know, we had a little retreat here yesterday, a spiritual retreat. I was doing some stuff with some beautiful ladies. And I described, well, you know, where I live. I said, you know, I got a little heaven here. I'm not waiting till I die. I'm going to enjoy some heaven on earth. I told my mother what I wanted, and she said, you'll never find it. And then she came and saw it. She said, oh my mother didn't believe in heaven. I didn't know that until she nearly passed. Sandrea told me that she connected with her after she passed. I've told you this before on this show. And she said, if she knew that heaven was so beautiful, she wouldn't have resisted going for so long. Remember that, Sandrea?
Yeah, I do.
And so she would call this a little bit of heaven. You know what I mean? Part of this message is put your heaven on earth. These crowns I wear, I just like them. But a lot of Blacks are waiting to get a crown in heaven. I mean, if it's a crown you like, wear that. But whatever it is, it's your crown. Sisters, when they go to church, those big hats, those are crowns. Wear that. Whatever it is that brings you out. Don't be waiting until you go on to the other side. Get yours now. You hear me? And don't be talking about white supremacy stopped you. Kick white supremacy in the behind and do your thing. You understand? Huh? As Sandrea said, dream your dream. Make it a reality. And people put down King for having dreams. You saw King was a revolutionary and a dreamer. Now, what's wrong with that? He got a good passport into heaven. God slapped him a little bit. He said, now, Martin, all those women, Martin now, you know. And of course, Martin could have had an answer. He could have said, well, Lord, if I'd come out of Africa, would you say that? But the fact is, yeah, he had some shortcomings. But the fact is, his integrity exceeded that. You hear me? It exceeded that. And he was a dreamer that tried to bring his dreams down to earth. So what we see in the organization of Kemet was a society based on twinness that symbolized oneness, because this pharaoh that had two crowns was ruling both lands with two capitals, north and south. And that was just part of the organization of society. But the key thing about the pre-dynastic period is it creates the culture of ancient Kemet. And at the core of this culture is what Dr. Jacob Carruthers like to call deep thought, and what the Dogon call deep knowledge, or it's called philosophy, but it's the spirit system of the society. And at the core of this spirit system was twinness. Now, I've talked about the struggle that I went through on the retreat. Sandrea helped guide me to a place in 3 months a year for 5 years, 15 months. I went through introspection. What I haven't told you is, well before that, in 1982, I went for a spiritual reading. I'm an astrologer, and sometimes I would go to bookstores that had good astrologers. But in this particular case, I heard there was a guy coming in who was a good reader. These are people that read your spirit, you know? And so I went, this guy named Eric. He had been trained in Brazil. He's a white guy. He's very good. And so he picked up, this is 1982, because I taped it. And I listened to this tape every 3 or 4 years, because there's always a pointer that I get out of it. So he picked up on the essence of me at that time, which was twinness. And one of the reasons that I could negotiate the life crisis that I went through, which was my destiny purpose on earth, which was to bring this feminine in line with the masculine, is that I was preparing for that through going through Dogon philosophy. And he picked that up. And so he saw it all over the place. He didn't call it twinness, he called it duality, and he was all over the place. And so I went back for a special reading with him, about 2 hours. And in that special reading, he predicted the number of books I'd write. I didn't tell him I was writing some of them at that point. He said, you're going to go into certain areas and people are going to want you to leave something with them on leadership. I didn't tell him. I had nearly finished a book on leadership. About 15 years later, I brought all the books I had written that he had predicted. And then he said, you're a part of a team of scholars. You're taking the old world of Africa and bringing this into this place to create a new reality. He really hit the nail on the head. He said, you're one of the scholars that's creating an outline that others are coming along to fill in. That's for the just societies that I keep talking about. He had it dead on. But the main thing he went through was what he called duality. Now, the thing is with me, one of the reasons that I had trouble with the masculine and the feminine is I was caught in this Western despiritualized, even though there's a lot of things that were spiritual about me. I was into astrology. I, had intuition. I'd listen to it from time to time. But the fact of the matter is my thought pattern was either or. It was good or it was bad. That was a Western thought pattern, And even when I'm digesting African thought, it's through that lens. And so what happened is in getting into Dogon philosophy, and by the way, when we do the sixfold stages to mental freedom, we're going to be getting into this. I'm just describing this. You're not going to get this through a description. This is an experience. And it took me years to reorient my thought pattern, because what happens in African philosophy is you get to check yourself out to see if you're in alignment with the cosmos or you aren't. And I could see I wasn't. And then I'm trying to understand, because they have what's called the Dunuso. I've mentioned this before, ADUNOSO, table of signs. The West calls it symbols, but it's much more profound than symbols. And the smallest thing is everything. I call it the within anything is everything principle, because being astrophysicists, they're able to fold stuff into very profound but simple systems. I'll give you an example. They have a cereal grain called Digitaria exilis. It's the smallest of cereal grains. So I went through 3 levels of the Dogon system, Juriso, Beniso, Boloso, over 30 years before I got to their highest system, because the systems have to transform you. And I didn't really know what Digitaria exilis represented. There's a whole series of things that happen. See, in Dogon philosophy and African philosophy, the way it's taught is through moving symbols or moving a dunuso that you identify with. So you have to, over time, internalize this to get it, And so it's only when I go to the highest level that I realize that this little cereal grain is Sirius B. That's the origin of the cosmos. You understand? So in this little cereal grain is included everything, the whole cosmos. But over a period of time, I'm reorienting my thought pattern. As Malcolm said, first his philosophy changed, then he said his attitude changed, then his thought pattern, and then his communication, and then his behavior pattern changed. Well, as my philosophy changed, my thought pattern and my attitude pattern began to change. And over a period of time, I was working out this idea of twinness, of seeing things connected rather than disconnected, complementing rather than opposed. But I'm describing the outside. You have to experience it from the inside. This was years of work. This didn't happen overnight. And so when I go on this retreat for 15 months, I'm being guided by that. And so what does the Dogon say about perfection? It's not freedom from fault. It's the synthesis of masculine and feminine. It's the union of the two, and they have a symbol, because for them, nomos, Nommo, which means word, these are spirits that represent God. They would be called netters, Netters, in Kemet, representing divine principles. So these are principles that are brought in to bring order, like Shu and Tefnut. And so I understood that it was a synthesis of masculine and feminine that was true perfection. And then what was key about that metaphor was this. When you work that synthesis out of the sensitive, intuitive feminine, the caring and nurturing creative feminine, and the creative masculine, what you're able to do is take what's abstract and bring it down to earth and create with it. And since I'm fire and earth, that's my metaphor for doing that. And it's after that work that my greatest creative potential comes, but it is through the twinness. So let me give you an example of how it worked in Kemet. So in Kemet, Asar represents reincarnation, the fact that he died and was reborn. And there are a lot of books that suggest that maybe the Christian metaphor for Jesus being died and resurrected comes from Kemet. And there's a lot of stuff. There's a book by Gerald Massey, Historical Jesus, mythical Christ that goes through this, But the key point is Asar is supposed to represent reincarnation. He dies physically, but he's reborn. But when it comes to twin thought, this is how it works. Again, I'm describing the outside. So Asar is the setting sun. My netter, which is Kepra, which is the rising sun, that's a rising sun. And then there's Heru, which is the sun at noon. So the sun rises, it goes to noon, and then it sets, and that's Asar. Now, this is called the Djeba principle, D-J-E-B-A, Djeba. It means the union of life and death. And so how did the Kemites regard life? Twin thought. Life is slow dying. That's what life is. Get that. Huh? And you wouldn't run around fearing death. Native Americans didn't, because they had the same twin thought. And so they say, death's your friend. Get to know it. And that's your greatest realization there. And if you've seen death, it's beautiful if you've done right. It ain't so beautiful if you haven't. Please believe me. I've seen some of these spooks who have gone to the other side and seen all their friends up there in that pit that is terrible. And they come back, some of them changed. Oh, they try and get a rebirth all of a sudden for the wrong reason. They don't want to burn or whatever it is. And by the way, hell ain't no devil. God rules both regions. You're only there until you learn your lessons. I know some people don't want to believe this, but hey, there's payback. You do wrong, there's payback, right? You do payback. You know what I mean? Huh? This place ain't no joke. And guess what? God don't judge you. You judge yourself. That car has got a memory of everything you did. When you pass to the other side, there is an instant memory replay. That's according to parapsychologists. I've gone to this before on the car. You understand? And so it's you judging yourself. God don't have to. And you put yourself there. Right place, wrong place. You do it. Don't blame nobody else. And all these Christians running around. I'm not knocking Christianity. I think Black Christianity is very different than white. And, I think whatever your religion is good. You know what I mean? But don't be running around here saying the devil did it. You did it. Don't be blaming no devil. You know what I mean? You did it. Take responsibility for it. You understand? So when Asar goes to the realm of death, which is night, and then comes back as the netter, Kepra, that's life. So life is slow dying. Death is a rebirth to a new life. And symbolically, we live, die, and are reborn. And that is the nature of transformation. You don't wait for heaven for that. That's what any transformation is. When you grow in life, you're dying in one state, you're being reborn in another. So it's interesting that the Kemetic civilization during this particular pre-dynastic period of Shu and Tefnut would marry both the intuitional and the rational, so-called. And you marry these two and you build a civilization on it. African civilizations, Asian and Native American, were generally based in the same way. Though this one really profound, not just Kemet, but the African one, really profound. And so it is this twinness that enables this creativity to flower. Because going back to Coltrane, remember, his was water and air. And I didn't explain, I won't go into it now, but he had real trials to go through. I explained that briefly. But the point is, the intuitional complemented the logical. One complemented the other. I don't have air, but I get my logic in different ways. Like I lay things out, like I seek advice. I bounce ideas off of different people. I read a lot. I know that I don't have air. But the point is, I make up for it in other ways. And I don't see it as a deficiency either, because whatever you are is the way you're supposed to be, minus fire and earth. And so it's the union of the creative with the practical. My stuff walks. It ends up being system because I'm fire and earth. That's me. Whatever your elements are, that's good for you. But the point is, water And air was real good for Kemet. And first of all, they would consider it as water because the Nile, the noon, water being the source of life. And then to create all the stuff they did, about the only thing they didn't create after the pre-dynastic period were the pyramids. Other than that, they created everything in pre-dynastic Kemet. And we don't study it. You hear me? The scholars don't study. This is my specialty. Why? Because they were just. I like the Anu because above all others, they were just. With people, what I value most is character. I don't care about your position. I don't care what you got. It's your character. What I love most about my wife is her character. My sister is her character. My brother is character. My mother and father, their character. They weren't saints. None of them were perfect. You know what I mean? I'm not. I'm working on my stuff. But character. My best friend, KND Solowazi, one of the most beautiful brothers you ever lay your eyes on. But there's a whole lot of people like that. You know what I mean? And by the way, a rule. You got a friend, make sure they have good character. And if they make mistakes, help them out. But if they are really wrongdoers, part company with them. That ain't easy, but part company with them. Because truth is what we're here to seek, and we all have our own truth. So I want to wrap up by simply saying that this period or this method for historical analysis is a hell of a tool. And you see, the European, their idea of history is ancient, medieval, modern, it's all linear, savagery, barbarism, civilization. They have savaged the planet, but they're left out of this category called savagery. These are ridiculous categories. But if you're looking at real history, then you're looking at cycles. And cycles in life, cycles in history. And there are a lot of different historical, there's economic cycles, there are political cycles, but these astronomical cycles are the great ones. And it's interesting how great historical periods line up with these cycles. It's what you choose to do with them here on Earth. You're soon going to be transitioning from the age that Sandrea was dealing with, which is the age of Pisces, into the age of Aquarius. And when that transformation comes, and we are in a period of transition. And sooner or later, the Earth is going to be falling into this age of Aquarius, and it's going to be righting wrongs. You hear me? But the thing is, you should be preparing for it now. And people are asking me, well, look at all this stuff that's going on now, you know, the restriction of voting rights, and everything's being set up to try and bring Trump back and to take the Senate and House back and all the rest. So what do you think? So it's all this gloom and everything. And I understand the gloom because they are trying to recreate 1876, post-Reconstruction. Their problem is the tide of history is against them. They're in decline. They're going down. This country's going down. China will replace it as a superpower in less than 20 years. This country may go to war with China, by the way. I'm no prophet, so I'm not trying to predict. I don't know what will happen. But the fact is, if they do, it'll be a big mistake. They got 1,400,000,000, nearly 500 million people. If they lost 500, they'd still stand. This country would be in bad shape if they make that stupid mistake. But since most declining powers go to war against rising powers, there's a good chance that might happen. But the key point is, you're going to be a majority in this country by 2042, 2043. Black, brown, red, and yellow. You need to prepare for the future. And that will be a shift of Blacks, Latinos, Asians, Native Americans, and those whites who align with you. It's a minority of whites who have defected from their camp. And that's all that made the difference in putting Trump out of the White House and on the way to the jailhouse. And by the way, I have a show on that predicted this before it happened. You should watch it. Black Power in the Civil War. Watch that one. And I had my cinematographer come in and just, document this. So the key thing is we need to be having one foot in the present, preparing for this reality right now, and one foot in the future. And when you've got a solid sense of who you are, the age you're in, then you can prepare for both. We need to be laying the foundations for the just society that needs to come. And as you see with me, it's stuff you can use right now. Sixfold stages to mental freedom, you use that right now. Twin lineal families, the balance of male and female, you use that right now. But that's the structure for creating a just society. It starts with each one of us. Western revolutions have dealt with the material. They haven't dealt with the spiritual and the material, and they haven't dealt with the spiritual and the physical. So then they have not addressed creating a higher order human being. And that is the first stress of anything that's truly revolutionary. And I've often said, I told you, Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, my good friend, the spokesperson for Black Power, I tell him, brother, first thing in for a revolutionary revolution is good character. That's the first thing. He want to argue the superstructure, the power structure, means of production, who controlled it, all that stuff. That's important. You should control the wealth in a society if you built the wealth. But the fact of the matter is, it's the quality of the human being that is going to be the key thing. And so we need to prepare our young people to be running stuff, not to be run. And the first one to run is yourself. So I want to say in conclusion that I hope you got something out of Sandrea's stuff and this processional stuff. And I'm telling you, this ain't no joke. This is the real deal. This stuff works. This ain't no coincidence. You know what I mean? So to all of you, Hotep, Sandrea, you got some comments? You want to make some comments on this?
I do. First of all, that was the best I've ever heard on the procession. That was really clear. I loved how you did that. And I particularly love the idea when you're talking about how it's showing the overall background, the climate of the celestial realm. That is, I mean, I can feel that. That's really, really true. And then I think it's so interesting that you picked this particular period of Gemini. I don't know if you're familiar with Alice Bailey, but she's written a book on esoteric astrology. No. And she is a theosophist. And what she says is that Gemini is the key to these times that we're living in. And when I read her, I just read like a couple of paragraphs and I let it work me. And so I'm seeing, you know, with your presentation, I mean, as you know, from the things I've been saying too, all along, that you picking this particular time of Shu and Teth and the, the Gemini, and that how, I mean, why it's so important, our ideology. The ideology that we have really influences everything because that's the background. That's that overall celestial climate inside ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then from that philosophy, then underneath that, that's the nomo, the words, you know, choosing the right words. And so that, I thought that was incredible. Also, you're talking about, you know, seeing the twins as connection. I know for me, when I moved to Hawaii, Spirit started showing me how all of us are twinned inside of ourselves. And that inside of ourselves, that there's this golden twin that's never been touched by any of the imperfections of the mortal and the earth realm. And it's a side of ourselves that stays glued to truth, and that it was our work to take the mortalized twin and marry them together. So I thought that was interesting that you were talking about the marriage, you know, marrying the different sides of the brain. And that is absolutely necessary to happen if we're going to be setting up a stage for full liberation. during these times. We have to, it all starts inside. It starts with ourselves.
Right.
Who are we? What are we doing? How are we dealing with our own mind? And then, separating our philosophy and our ideology from the programs, societal and religious and political kinds of programming and hypnotism. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, that was interesting, and I haven't heard of that person. What's her name again that you cited?
Alice Bailey.
Okay, you can give me the reference. I'll get it from you. I'd like to check that out.
Oh yeah, there's some really interesting things. She works with the rays, and in her philosophy, there are exoteric rulers and esoteric rulers, and it's very interesting. The exoteric ruler of Pisces is Neptune, co-ruled by Jupiter, but the esoteric ruler is Pluto. And it's interesting, like you say, that these are the times we're under the decan of Pisces Scorpio. And so again, it's just showing the potential for resurrection out of all of the scams and lies and things that we have grown up. We all have an idea, a picture of ourselves that has nothing to do with our true divine reality. Right. And that's the first picture that we need to pop it.
Yeah, and you started off, and each one of your presentations has dealt with the importance of the intuitional married, but you're placing a special focus on the intuitional because that's what's downplayed or treated as something that's mumbo jumbo or superstitious. And I know for me, because coming out of my own training, I discarded the formal training. That is the books and stuff. I went to a different informational source, and then I came up under a different system that would transform me. But still, the mindset was still pretty much in that mindset. And what I found as I worked, because African philosophy played a big part in helping me with that, and always African American, because you cannot access your ancient past unless it's through the lens of your own culture. And so for me, I have three specialties in African American culture: the Black church, the Black family, and Black music. Those are all specialties of mine. Why? It's the most African part, and it's the most essential part. I'm no longer a Christian, but I respect the Black church, and people who just put it down, you don't really know what's happening there because you don't know how it was really put together, most of it. That's another discussion. So it was through the lens of the spiritual blues, African American culture, and Dogon African culture that this shift began to take place. And so the most valuable thing I got out of it was this synthesis of masculine and feminine, reason and intuition. And then what did it do? It led me to the gold mine, the beautiful light, God. Wisdom that transcends anything you can imagine. You hear me? And most people don't get it. Some of my good friends, they'll say, yeah, you talk that God stuff, but I don't, they're respecting me, but they don't get what I'm saying. Because when I say the light, there's no ego in it. I would like to have been smart enough to come out with this on my own. I don't really care as long as I got it. I'm glad I got it from God. But the point is, I'm just telling you the truth. And so uncovering what's the model for African families, which, by the way, if you have a good family thing going, you're using that model. You just don't use the term I came up with, twinlineal. You don't use it. But the fact is, it's balanced. That's why it's working. You know what I mean? And so I couldn't have got that from any other place other than when I got this intuitional, cleaned myself up internally to where I got in touch more with that intuitional side. I married the two. That has been the key for me. And key to growth, it changed me. As a sister that I was meeting with yesterday, Janae Johnson, who's a beautiful sister, I'm gonna have her on the show. She does a lot of work with young girls. She said, you changed. Most of the people I'm working with didn't even see what she saw because she's deep into this. By the way, she's Black Christian and she's Afrocentric, by the way. You know what I mean? One of the most beautiful people I know. And I'm a spiritual father now, so she'll be watching this. Yes, daughter. Just remember, if I'm your spiritual father, what that means. But she's a wonderful person to be around. But she could see the change. That rough, tough exterior kind of got softened. That worried people on my job because I'm the one that kicked butt. You know what I mean? They were afraid I was too soft to fight. No, I'm even a better fighter. You know what I mean? A little bit more subtle. You might see a smile every now and then where you'd always see a frown, but I frown more than I smile because I'm under Saturn's influence. I know that. But I got a sense, Sandra knows I got a sense of humor. I always did. You know what I mean? I think there's a funny side to some of the worst things in life. You need to get your humor on, baby. You know what I mean? And especially when you're tap dancing on your enemies' heads. Now that is really fun. I get all kinds of humor, but I don't laugh then because I'm showing humility. I'm acting like, oh, I'm really sorry. I'm not, but I don't want to lord over it because if you do that, that enemy is going to come back on you. You're going to now do my bidding. That's a rule in war. So the synthesis of masculine and feminine, the synthesis of intuition and reason, this is real key. This is real key. And it's the key to creativity. It's the key to being a better human being. It's a key part of what we want in restructuring societies. And kids have this. Kids are in tune with this. They're programmed out of it, especially males. They're not all programmed out of it, but a lot are. So anything else you want to say, Sandra, before we go to comments?
Yeah, I really like that idea of the union of life and death. Dejebi, how did you pronounce that?
Dejeba.
Dejeba.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was incredible because really and truly, death marries life every birth.
Yeah, exactly.
And when we live not in fear of death, but honor and respect it, there's a potential for freedom. If we're walking around and we're so afraid of dying that we don't fully live, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, death will come and take us at the time. I believe that there's a divine time and a divine plan for each man, that you can't die until it's your time.
Yeah, yeah. And like our mother, she got it postponed because she said she was living on borrowed time because her energy had really just about gone. But she lived for special reasons and God gave her that time. So I hope I can pull that one off. Give me a few more, God, because I got some more. But I don't think there's any accident that when people go, very, very often, you can look and say, well, they didn't have any more to do. You know what I mean? Yeah, they were living okay,
Right.
But it looks like the work they were doing before had stopped. And that's why some of them will be honest and say, well, they'd like to live longer, but I've had some good friends who reached that point. They said, well, if this is all that I have left, I've lived a good life. And what they're really saying is they fulfilled their purpose. No one completely does, but like our mother, Sandra, and I, both being astrologers after she died, we both concluded she had done her work.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
I mean, she was done with the nursery school. She always said when the nursery school, when she was too old to do that, it was time for her to leave.
Oh,
and she just held on a little. Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you know she ran that school up until she was 88?
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, they didn't know how old she was.
Yeah. I'm getting there.
Yeah,
I want to get way beyond that too. I told my mother when I hit 60, I'm letting everybody know I don't want to be around. She trying to forget when she was born. She'd invent stuff like that. But yeah, that's true. She had two dreams. One was having children. The other one was teaching. And she did both of those and did them well and grew. That's the main thing. And I'd say the main thing about our mother is she grew in love. She got a better understanding of what love was.
She sure did.
And she learned a lot from her students and the parents who came into her life, as well as everything else in life. She grew. You know?
I gave her a lot to teach. I gave her some stuff to work with.
Yeah, you sure did. Both of you. Both of you.
Both of us. Oh, she did it for me too. Absolutely. Yeah. She initiated me. I initiated her.
Yeah. You had mom, and then mom had great grandmother, and you got your own. And so that's been a part of the destiny cycle in this family. That's another thing I would say. You know, when people look at your families, look at the spiritual patterns in your families. And those are usually an indication of why your families joined together, because they didn't just become your brother or sister by accident. Yeah. You know, so
yeah. We have work to do.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, Sandra, I've really enjoyed this, and we're going to get to what people are saying, but
okay, good.
We'll from time to time, we'll do this again. I know people are going to want it, but I'm really proud of you and your stuff. That was beautiful, what you presented.
Thank you,
lady. Okay, there are some comments here, and I saw a question. I don't know if there are that many questions from Brother Ogawa. Question: astrologically, what does the removal of Pluto from the Western astrological chart portend or suggest for the society at large, if it suggests anything at all? Sandra?
Well, there's no way anyone's going to remove Pluto from my chart, from my soul, from inside me. I know astronomers thought they could demote Pluto, but it's too late. We already see and feel and experience this power. You know, I mean, when Pluto was just discovered, that was the time of the atom bomb, and Pluto rules the atom bomb. Yeah. I mean, there's just too many things that show that when Pluto came on the scene, all the things that have changed. Oh, and I thought that was interesting. You were making a comment about Atum. And Atum is really about the atoms in our own body. Yeah. I mean, so there's no way that anyone can demote Pluto from all the astrologers that I know. None of us are demoting Pluto.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And just because something's small doesn't mean it isn't mighty and powerful.
Yeah. The birth of the solar system is due to a dwarf star. Some say Sirius B, some say it's a star smaller than even the dwarf star. From the smallest of stars, and a dwarf star is one that's dying, comes the entire universe. And from the seed of a man and the womb of a woman comes life.
That's right.
Everything is small. And then God. Yes. What is God? Anybody seen God really? I mean, I've seen the light. I know God's the light. Have you seen the whole of God? God is no thing and God is everything. You know what I mean? Huh? Yeah. And you know, we're too much into bigness. Everything's got to be big. Big skyscrapers, big car, big bank account, big, and little inside. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Sandra and I, we were talking about Pluto before. My observation about Pluto in a chart is because Pluto's the most furthest removed of the planets in our solar system, Pluto picks up the vibes of all the planets. So if you were to do one chart, the Pluto chart would be most revealing. Whatever those are, that is really the summary of the person right there. You know what I mean? And it doesn't matter what they say, it's in you. So you can't take that influence out, but they're just dealing with the material Pluto, and they're redesignating it, taking it from the status of a planet to something else. It's a planet, baby. It's just a small one. You know what I mean? That's all. The 12 were small. You're going to disregard them? They gave birth to everything, including the greatest civilization humanity's ever known. Dismiss size? My father was not the biggest man. He's one of the baddest men on many levels. He wasn't real tall. And that also taught me a lesson, you know? Don't think size gives you any advantage. I never thought that. You know what I mean? I looked at my father. I said, ooh, wee. Let's see. From Lynn Mosley, Baba Tashaka, and Mama Sandrea, moving through Steve Arroyo's Astrology and Psychology in 4 Elements, it is heavy on equating the origins of many concepts to only European Greeks. Any thoughts on that, Sandrea?
Well, he's European. I don't think he studied African history, so I don't slight people on that. I liked his book because of the wisdom that I gained and the understanding that I gained about the elements.
Yeah, he's the breakthrough astrologer on elements. He's the first and only one that I've seen that has been able to explain what those elements do. Everyone else, it was their logical idea about it, and it didn't really work. He is the only one that's done that. Now, he didn't do it for every element mixture, so that's something people have to figure out on their own. But he gave you the model for it, and I know it works because applying it to me, hey, it fit. And then when I look at other people, that's one of the most penetrating things I can do in a chart is when I look at those elements, and then you'll see it in other parts of the way one planet relates to the other. And you saw how it worked with Coltrane. That was really one of his whole cards. That was one of his real strengths that he could rely on. And then if you look at the Shu Tefnut thing in ancient Kemet, that is really describing the African approach to this, and the Asian and the Native American. They don't, in fact, the idea of masculine in the Western world is a despiritualized idea to begin with. It seems that all the spirit stuff is associated with the moon. The sun is somehow just this powerful force. No, the sun is intuitive, it's creative in its own way. Every part is. And in African, Asian, Native American cultures, that's how it's viewed. And in fact, because they have synthesis, the males exude a lot of kindness. The males exude a lot of humility. You know what I mean? And that's just because of the nature of the culture, you know? And that's the nature of being a human being. My father, Sandrea, I had a close relationship with my father. My father was a very kind, loving man. He was a terror for people messing with Black people, a terror. But for us, I don't recall him ever laying a hand on any of us.
None of us.
It was his mouth. And it wasn't his mouth that was hard. He would reinforce the laying on of hands by my mother by supporting it. And my brother said, that was harder than a whipping. I don't remember, because those are stuff I don't remember. But I do remember the kindness coming from him. You know what I mean? And my mother told me, I've told you this before on this show, that when she was really not satisfied with him on something, he'd actually get on his knees and crawl to her. What man's going to do that? Not me, I'll tell you that. I told my wife, that ain't happening. But the fact is that it happened with him. You'd have to know my father to know he ain't crawling to no Ku Klux Klan. He ain't crawling to no army. He ain't crawling to nobody who has got something to hang over your head. To my mama, what does that say? That's one hell of a man. You know what I mean? Huh? And Sandrea may or may not accept this. It's a fact. He was closer to Sandrea than me or Neil. That's a fact. And why? That's a natural attraction. The father to the daughter. In Black culture, that's natural. You know what I mean? Natural. And it's not because he didn't love me. It's not because he didn't love my brother. You know what I mean? It was because that's a thing. You know what I mean? Your daughter. That's special. You hear me? That's, I don't know what other cultures do with that. I know in Black culture, that's the thing. My neighbor who doesn't like to be mentioned, he watches all my shows. He has 2 identical twin, beautiful daughters. And one of them said to him recently, she's a mathematician in the family, Daddy, thank you so much for encouraging me to be strong. And he said, oh, yeah, baby. You got to stand on your own in the world. Yes, indeed. And they're all daddy's girls. Anything go wrong, where's daddy? You know what I mean? So, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, so I would just say about Arroyo is, yeah, so he didn't have no African references. That's true, but his stuff works. And if something works, I'm gonna use it.
Me too.
You hear me? And that's the real key thing. And by the way, in my writings, I've drawn from some mess. I mean, some of the stuff on the TWA, some of the books I've used, some of these writers ain't worth 2 cents. But guess what? They had some insights. And I go pull those insights out. You know what I mean? And that doesn't mean I respect what they did or anything else, but some of them could speak the language, or they had some insight. And that's what I pull out. So that's the way it is in life. You know what I mean? Be open and take what's positive, discard the other. Adolfo Austin, it's been a long time there, brother. How you doing? He said, these are some comments. During my darker moments, as well as those, I lay blessed within the light of my spirit, found comfortable direction in the words you watered in my inner ear. I can never thank you enough. Thank you. That's a nice statement. Lynn Mosley, many thanks for today's teachings. Baba Tashaka, Mamba Sandrea. Let's go up because I saw a question up higher. I want to get to that. Stephen McKenzie, he has a question. Sister Sandrea, from my studies, we have been in the age of Pisces, and that was the age of confusion. Is this true? And does the individual born under the sign Pisces also, are they a confused person? Sandrea?
Okay, yes, confusion is something that is a part of the sign Pisces in stages. Yeah, there are certain times, there are certain moments when that happens. However, with Pisces, as we get into a state of confusion or a state of doubt or a state of depression, the key is with Pisces is to relax and feel it and let it be. And it will morph and change into clarity if you let it. Now, I just want to make a statement here. I don't think you asked it, but I want to make the statement. Here it is. Neptune is the most spiritual planet in our solar system. So why is the world in such a mess? And why has the world been in such a mess since Neptune's been around? Well, I believe part of it is, first of all, it is hard for society to connect with that. But I believe that that's also been purposeful to desensitize half of our brain. If we're not even operating on the full level of our brain, and there are so many programs to try and get us to not connect with our divinity. And the other thing is, I think people misunderstood the fact Pisces is a mutable sign, and so the axiom for Pisces is I believe. Well, that's supposed to be a starter place. The problem is that people just believe in this and believe in that. Well, that doesn't do you any good if you don't test it and then attempt to live what you believe so that it changes and takes you into knowing and takes you into the place where you actually become that. And then I wanted to make one other point too. There are many astrologers that do believe that we're already into the age of Aquarius, that we are already like writing, the edge. And I'm one of the ones that feels that. And what was told to me is that just like Aquarius is a maverick kind of sign, It's unpredictable, and it's very individualistic. And what I was told that unlike other ages, that the age of Aquarius, some will blip into it faster than others, and that it's not necessarily that everyone is entering that age at the same time. It depends on the inner work that a person's done in their life. So,
Is that it?
yep.
I would add to this, my moon is in Pisces. My sun is in Leo. So part of the reason that I was able to negotiate some of these spiritual things in my life is the way the moon operated in my chart, which is in a place of transformation. And also the way in which it tied into the central issues in my life, which is the feminine. And part of the problem I had to deal with was that I idealized the feminine. I wasn't in the situation where I was doing Sisters In. I romanticized the feminine. And that came from a lot of things. And so I had to really work on that. But the key point is that the moon in Pisces helped me to access this spirit realm. And then tied in, I'm a Leo, 4 planets in Leo in the first house. I'm a real lion. I'm a real, whatever that is. I know what that is. So it's not just your sun's sign. Now I wanted to talk about, so the idealism, the spiritual realm, I've always been attracted to it, but having the moon in Pisces gave me a stronger inclination in that direction. John Coltrane, one of the things that was a saving grace for him was the role of Neptune in his chart. And I won't go into the planet that it aspected and all of this, but what it led to was a deep belief on Coltrane's part that he was going to make a great contribution to music. Started off with little talent, he worked on it hard, and he got things to a higher level, and then he ascended to the highest plane. We went through some of this before. But the key point is, one of the things that inspired him was this Piscean Neptunian thing that inspired him to musical greatness. It was an ideal that he worked hard to achieve. So ideal has a lot to do with everything you do in life. Your gifts, ultimately, those are your ideals. Are you going to pursue them? Because before you pursue them, they might appear to be unachievable. What are you going to do with it? And so that's all a part of that. I had someone else that made a comment about, oh, right here, Stephen McKenzie. I'm a Pisces and seem to be struggling. Sandra, you want to make any comment on that?
Oh, yes. Hey, I go through my periods of struggling too. I mean, that's a part of it. I mean, to bring through the higher aspects, the lower has to be let go of. And the only way we can let go of it is to face it and recognize it. And for me, I mean, my spiritual practice is what keeps me on point. It's a daily thing, really working it and working my prayer, really making prayer, asking myself to be aligned in my highest. Because, when we fly too low in this world and we engage too much with this world, it's called, being in the battlefield. And the only way that it works for me to stay connected is to aim to be above the battlefield. So I'm on the Mount Olympus of my soul, looking at what is occurring, but every now and then something will hit me, or a mood, whatever, and I find myself falling too low, then I need to just stop. And that's what I do. I'll stop and allow myself to be repositioned. Because again, I just want to say for Pisces, it's always, we have to go beyond ourselves. If we try to look to any past way that worked for us or whatever it is, it's not going to work now. What works is us going beyond ourselves in the moment, asking for help with our oversoul, with our God, with our guides, what our angels, whatever it is that you want to work with. But this is not the time to try and navigate the waters through a human ego. Man, that is the hell zone. That when we ask and ye shall receive. So ultimately, too, it's the struggles that are helping us to go to the next level by really facing whatever's showing up in our life that is a struggle. That's where the gift is. And that's the other thing I highly recommend is working with that struggle. What is it? What is the purpose of it in our lives? And what is the gift in it? Boy, I'll tell you, that has worked for me for so many years. I mean, I learned that back in the 70s, to look for the gift in things. And boy, it has changed my life.
Mhm.
So I hope that helps him. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're in the material world and it negates the spirit, it negates the ideals and all the rest of this stuff. Don't let it, because it's the ideals that drive everything. And so, yeah, that was a good point, Sandra. I think that's it.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah,
This has been really, really great.
yeah, I
And
really enjoyed this.
I'm just, thank you so much for having me on your shows and giving me an opportunity to share, because, all these things have been percolating inside myself. It's really nice to have them come out
Yeah,
and share them with people where it might make a difference in their lives.
yeah. And, you're dealing with the fundamental stuff that women deal more with, the feelings, the emotions, and the vulnerability. And you've shown that, but the deep insight that comes from that. So I really want to thank you. I hope people got something out of this. I know I did. I mean, I got a whole lot.
I did too.
Thanks,
A whole
Sandra.
lot. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Shaka.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
okay.
Okay. See everybody next week.
All right.
See you
Bye,
later.
everyone.
See you later, Sandra.
See you later, Shaka.
Yeah.